NUI Galway has a long history of widening the participation of Irish travellers in higher education and celebrating traveller history and culture. From the Strule Arts Centre in Omagh, County Tyrone, the NUI Galway Access Centre and the Fermanagh and Omagh District Council is proud to present an event that focuses on the link between the Irish and Cant language and also the rich contribution of the traveller community to Irish folk music and song. I hope you enjoy this event.
Gymani díri a charge Tá fáilte romh an seo an nacht hiag Ionad Ealaíne na Sruthaile an seo an Ómaigh. Seo Oíche Chultúir Tá muid bailithe an seo an nacht le Oíche Chultúir a ceiliúradh. Tá muid garach an cheangal idir an Lucht Siúil agus an Cultúr Gaelach. You're all very welcome. This is a culture night event to celebrate and to explore the connection between the language and culture of the travelling community and Irish language and culture. To do that, we have a couple of speakers who you'll hear presently, and then to celebrate the connection, we have singers and musicians from both traditions. This event has come about as a result of training that was organised by Rumena Costanova McCabe, Good Relations Officer with Fermanagh District Council. It emerged at that training that there was this connection between Cant, the language of the travelling community, and the Irish language, and also that the travelling community had a central role in the shaping and continuation of traditional Irish music. After that event, I was in touch with a member of the travelling community, Mr. Owen Ward, who's here, is going to speak to you in a minute, from the University of Ireland in Galway, NUI Galway. He's an education officer there. It's a project which encourages people from the travelling community to remain in and to take advantage of education, especially further education. So we're going to start proceedings with a word from Owen Ward. Curgi Falcha Riverdal.
So, Chief Katina, I just want to say on behalf of the Access Centre at NUI Galway, what an honour it is to be here tonight in Omagh with an invitation from Kevin and to celebrate traveller history and culture. For me, as a traveller man in higher education who works on a daily basis to support and empower the traveller community to overcome barriers in education, to build a sense of belonging in education, I firmly believe to be proud of one's history and culture is extremely important. Again, it's an honour to be here tonight to witness my heritage and my culture to be celebrated with you all here tonight. Thank you very much.
Owen. So Anish, we're going to proceed with the two speakers that we have tonight. We have a man from Donegal who is he is a former professor of Queen's University Belfast. He'll be followed by a member of the travelling community called Oíche Chultúir and Tamajik Toshik leis an Ogunanyal. So Tamaj chun idir Lucht Siúil Chultúir agus a chud canti an Curgi Falcha Riverdal Riv Gona.
My talk tonight is short enough talk, but since you're probably a mixed audience, or I expected you to be a mixed audience, some of you may know some of this stuff, and some of you may not. But I'm just trying to come at it from a different angle and hopefully maybe come up with some sort of conclusion at the end as to what we're about. The first thing I would say is that the history of gammon, or or cant, is still to be written. Sorry, this will keep annoying you now. That's important because we need to write it. We have a lot of information, but the people who collected all that information, who wrote about it, have never all got together as a group to work as a research group and to make proposals as to what exactly we know about the history. And it's the most interesting history, but we only have bits and pieces. But if we get all the people who know about it and so on, if we could get them all together, then we might have some kind of product which we could give to somebody or go and seek money to make more research or whatever. So just bear that in mind and as I go through this. Now, as you know, cant was much more widespread at one time than it is now. And the basic elements from the Irish language are on the mostly lexical items, as they're called, are words. Words that have been changed and are probably not recognizable, except maybe by those who would know Irish well, but even then it's not that easy. But this is an interesting development in Ireland. I know that in the history of the Irish language, English replaced Irish, but nobody talks about cant and those replacing the Irish language as it was way back maybe 3 or 4 centuries ago and what happened to it. And I think we have here a commodity of our own which we should develop and research and so on. The number of words probably that people know at present might be low enough, maybe 600 to 700, but at one time there were a lot more words than that available. Now, it was first written down in the 1880s and was described, of course, as a secret language. So Charles Leland, an amateur historian and gypsyologist in England, told of coming across an Irish traveller in Britain who told him that of an older language spoken among the Irish tinkers, as he called them. The language was called Shelta or Sheldru, a word created by him. Nobody likes this word because it's become a sort of educated word. So the words that everyone uses as cant or gammon. Now, he thought he was a folklorist and so on, and he was interested in the kind of language that occupational groups used and so on. And of course, he thought that this was a language created by the tinkers, as he called them then, in order to exclude other outsiders who might have other occupational. The first collections we have consist of words, single words, but most of the material was collected by people in Britain. Most of who collected these words did not know any Irish and did not recognize the resemblances between the cant words and the Irish language because they were disguised through the application of various rules. Initial academic interest in cant as a language began when John Sampson of the University of Liverpool, and cant was discovered in Liverpool, and at least initially written down, and Kuhnemeyer, a German scholar, took up the study of the language. Now, later on, people in Ireland began to collect these, and we are lucky to have those collections. The two most important ones, in my opinion, back then was done by people who worked for what was called the Irish Folklore Commission. Padraig McCranie, who did his recordings in 1931-34 in County Longford, and Michael Henry, who collected materials in County Mayo in 1939. I was glad to meet Padraig McCranie when he was 102 years old. He came to visit us at Queen's and gave us a lecture and walked up the long stairs. as if he had only been 18 years old. He said many interesting things. He said that a lot of the people he met, that is the travellers, were great speakers of Irish as well as English. And some of them indeed may have been native speakers of Irish. He said when they pronounced gammon, that was heavily influenced by the Irish language sound system, and this gave it its particular flavour. Indeed, I must point out that MacDrania wrote many of the cant or gammon words using Irish orthography. Now, this language also, cant, gammon, is now spoken in parts of America and Georgia and Mississippi and in Tennessee, and has been recorded by a linguist called Jared Harper in 1969 and 71. The language seemingly was brought there by travellers who left Ireland during the famine years of 1845 to 1848. They considered themselves specifically Irish. The language of America still contains a lot of the vocabulary with striking similarity with that spoken by Irish travellers in Ireland, and now it's almost 200 years. So we can say cant is at least 200 years old, but a lot older than that, I believe. Now, when or why or how is gammon used, and what does this tell us, or what does the collections tell us about them? Well, probably the most important use for gammon is when travellers are among the settled community. In a sense, this protects their privacy as travellers, their culture, from outsiders. In this context, mothers may also use their gammon with their children in order to control them and talk to them in their own language. Using cant in these and similar situations is not thought of as being secretive as such. It forms a protection for the traveller's world and of their culture. Secondly, the language is also used within the community itself when sensitive issues are being discussed and when particular situations arise during day-to-day living. Some of the forms of cant and gammon that have been collected indicate a process of exposure to the language from very early, and this is reflected in the pronunciation and grammar, and is similar to the way in which children learn early language in infancy from year 1 to 6. And that is what is interesting, that as a language, it is learned by children the same sort of sequence as to learn what we call normal languages. Thirdly, when travellers, I think, are making a living among the settled community, and this is increasingly the case, they also make use of cant among themselves. All these instances of language usage provide a type of solidarity from their own community when travellers find themselves in alien or strange surroundings. There has been a lot of debate about the origins of cant and gammon and how its non-English vocabulary is related and similar to many words in the vocabulary of the Irish language. There has always been agreement about this relationship. There hasn't always been agreement with this relationship. And R.A.S. McAllister in The Secret Languages of Ireland, that he wrote in 1937, has been much debated and criticised. Nevertheless, McAllister is the only one who has synthesised or brought together the information contained in the cant materials collected by a large number of people, covering a period of almost 50 years, from 1880 to 1935. This was not an easy task, as the various collections were made by people from different backgrounds and linguistic training. Many of them, as we have already mentioned, did not know any Irish, while others spoke and wrote Irish very competently. In this short overview, we will not go into any great detail about McAllister's work and purpose in writing this book. The reader can refer to the above-mentioned publication, The Secret Languages of Ireland. It would seem that the particular forms of cant and gammon were derived from written language forms, tempered in places by pronunciation. Now, that's important. I can be taken up of it. That is, started off as a written language by somebody who was educated enough among the travellers and then spread. But we'll come to that towards the end of the presentation. Many of these forms reveal dialectal origins. That is, we know that some of the words and their pronunciation came from certain dialects, because only these dialects have special form in which the eventual words in cant came into being. So, just for those of you who may not be familiar with what cant does, if we take the word póca meaning a pocket, in cant it's gopa. So póca becomes gopa. Canna, which means a tin can, becomes neca. Canna becomes neca or neca. Cunyal, which is a candle, cunyal, a word we got from Latin a long time ago, and now becomes nucal, cunyal, nucal, and so on. Ode, probably a simpler word for two, in Irish though becomes ode, and so on. The word for sugar becomes giuchre, so Shukra and Gukra. This tells us this is a Connacht construction. In Ulster Irish, it's Shukra, so it could not give Gukra, and so on. And in Munster, they say Shukire, which has 3 syllables, and so on. So there's a lot to be learned from this if you know how to go about it. This indicates that the basic way of making up words was to reverse syllables, but there are also other ones. So the Irish word for bujail, which is a word that they borrowed from English or French, bujail, became Sruthaile. I think what happened at times when they rearranged the syllables, they began with a vowel and they didn't like it, words beginning with a vowel, and so you get especially SR, GR, or some such combination at the beginning of words. Ool, which is an Irish word, is gruel, as you know, and so on. These examples, I think, will suffice to elicit transfers of Irish words into Gammon, and in most cases they become unrecognizable except perhaps for those who speak and write Irish. In the beginning, I think, they also use, when they put words together, they put them together as they are in the Irish language, which is a different order of words. So you have a verb, and then you have somebody doing an action and the action. Whereas in English, it's the opposite. The guy does the action, comes first, and then the action itself, and so on. But I think as they became more and more bilingual in Ireland, that Cant gave up a lot of the characteristics that they originally had, which was that of the Irish language, and took over the way things are done in English and so on. So now in Gammon you have a lot of just English grammar, words that end in S or ES or ED or ING and so on, which did not do so in the beginning if we are correct in our interpretation. Another interesting argument could be if we take the words that I gave to you a while ago that are disguised by the scrambling runes and substitutions. Many of these words had been borrowed by Irish itself from English and or Norman French from the 13th century onwards. And since they appear, these are the words that was used by the people who spoke Cant. We can probably state that Cant possibly began way back in 15 or 1600, at a period when in Ireland there's evidence of the community itself becoming bilingual. Now, there are interesting questions that have never been answered or debated, which is even worse. So, first is how did Gammon, who thought of Gammon or Cant? Why did it start off? Why did they need this language? There has been no debate except very piecemeal. Okay? Some of the reasons are that we haven't come up with an answer to this, that researchers unaware or not competent to any degree in the use of the cant in its present form. Researchers and commenters lacking a detailed, competent knowledge of the earlier forms and history of the Irish language. What did the Irish language look like in 1300 or 1500 or 1600 or whenever? Researchers not having a solid working knowledge of Irish dialect form. In a way, this change to the cant is, in my opinion, a second revolutionary historical socio-linguistic change of language used in Ireland outside the Irish to English language change, and we should be proud of it in a way and examine it and research it more and write about it and let other people know about it and back it up with proper argument and so on. Now, the basic question is, was cant a written convention? That is, was it derived from Irish spelling, which I must say it looks like, or was it derived from the then current pronunciation of Irish? And did any particular dialect take precedence? Now, you can try it yourself on your English words. If you think of an English word, like doggy, now doggy. Now, what would doggy become? You'd have to become a goody, and so on. It's not that easy to do, but most of you probably, I am assuming, can read and write English or Irish. Now, if you can, then it's easier. So there's a question: who came along, or were there a group of people who belonged to the travelling community and who were well educated in written Irish and English way back in the 17th century? Maybe some of you have the answers. I don't, but we have to consider it. Who were the creators? Who were they? And how did they function? Were they related to each other? How did they come together? Where did they come together as a group like this here? Were they educated? Were they bilingual? Presumably so, maybe English and Irish. Then, how long did it take people to learn, acquire the new forms? These were new words, new things that you didn't recognize. And how did this acquisition succeed in spreading so successfully? So think of the travellers who went to the United States, the Irish people who emigrated to the United States and who still speak this. Now, the people who taught them, their parents and so on, must have been born around 1800. So this was a fairly fruitful exercise in learning a different language, or a different form of language, and we don't know enough about it, but we could, and we ought to examine it in more detail and help, perhaps, give us a better understanding of what really happened and why it is so important to now protect it and use it in schools and use it in other functions as well, in singing songs or writing or whatever. Thank you very much.
Fermanagh go gón as féachaint Fhear Manach a chur ar láthair. Thanks to Donald for outlining the background history of cant and for giving us insights into the content of that language. And I'm going to call now on a member of the travelling community for his knowledge, to share his knowledge and information on cant with us as well.
So my name is Ionad Ealaíne. I'm a traveller. I'm from Cultúr outside of Tuam in Galway. And I'm actually really excited today to talk about this because we very rarely have these spaces to talk about our language. So one of the first things we're talking about would be I consider, and many other people at the moment consider cant to be a form of Irish because it comes from Ireland, it's come from Irish people. However, it doesn't fall under the protections of our Irish Language Act. And I feel that is because as a people we're disassociated from what people would interpret as being truly Irish. And that we're seen to be either lesser Irish or somehow a social dropout. But one of the things I want to talk for would be the history of it. So the definitions that we currently have around our language, I think it's very important that we actually consider who made those definitions, who decided they were there, and who decided that was, I suppose, the topical forms, the history, the language is usually set in a very settled normative space in which we've been researched by external forces from our community rather than ourselves. So when we're looking at definitions, we're often caught up in the idea of the academic ones rather than what the community considers a language and where its own sense of, I suppose, origins, uses, both protections, but also, I suppose, the fluidity. See, again, I had all this kind of shiny stuff, so bear with me. Our relationship in itself is a very complex one. I think when we talk about gammon cant, quite often it becomes about the settled normative voice that we use it to protect ourselves. And we use it when we're unsettled people, and we use it for trade. And that means that our language suddenly isn't our language. Our language is all about settled people. And I think that's something that we need to actually consider and to challenge when appropriate, because it's literally saying that our native voice is about the majority population rather than the people who actually share it and speak it and are a part of it. Next one would be one of my favourite aspects of it within the academic kind of timeline would be the 1980s, in which our language was discovered. And I love that interpretation because I love the idea, again, it's the wider institutions discovering a language that had been spoken by its own people. You know, we didn't discover it. Like, there was settled people and that kind of system discovered it. We were just simply speaking it. So when we're looking at those timelines, we need to check, go on, who sets that narrative tone, who sets that space, and are we following the community's understanding, or are we following the limited research that's being done external to us? Next one would be I suppose one of the things that comes up often is the community connectivity and kind of nuances. A lot of what we have is dictionaries, and they're replacement words, and they don't come with context or tone or situational, I suppose, experiences. Like, one of my favourite words is comra. Any traveller here would know what comra is. So comra isn't just a version of the word madra or dog. It's an exclamation, it's an insult, it's a feeling, it's a situation, kind of effort. So when we replace it with just the term dog, we're actually limiting an entire experience and understanding of concepts to a word that usually refers to English or to Irish, rather than to our own language and our own sense of who we are. I suppose dictionaries, the settled Irish kind of English references are primarily, I suppose, contrasted and rarely independent of the community's own references. Assumptions is that they're interchangeable only, not that they're unique or they've grown and adapted in their own unique way. The pool of engagement for people who've been studying has been incredibly limited. It's usually the same kind of collection of families in the same area that have been studied, rather than a wider collection, because we as a community ourselves have never had the opportunity, the resources or the access to both to fully and appropriately access what's been done already, but also to do our own study ourselves without that external voice of critique or analysis that may draw towards a more settled form rather than actually who we are as a person and a people. Also the economic principles around disruption of the language that most people don't really take into consideration, the isolation, oppression, repression, rejection that travellers have experienced, and sometimes that manifests in our language and our fear of using it in spaces. There's actually this wonderful folklorist, and her PhD is actually in our language, and Maria Ryder, and I think her study is actually really incredibly interesting if anyone wants to check her out. But as an example of how some of the research can be conducted is that she was a teacher in Ennis in a Trans-Pacific training centre. And part of her conclusions when people discovered that she was undertaking this PhD is that she was going to study the language. And part of her conclusions is that travellers simply didn't speak the language very well, or very cognitively, or very expressively, without putting it into the social context and the socioeconomic context of, she was a teacher in a training unit in which they were paid to be. That was very settled normative. So them using their own language openly, it might be interpreted as being insulting or othering or rejecting of the teacher who happened to be studying them. So I think that when we're looking at those concepts and understandings, we really need to put them into the perspective of what the community feels and how travellers feel, rather than what the settled normative distant research has been telling us. Because again, we just haven't had the opportunity to do our own. One of my favourite tones is the idea of secret. I love the idea of our language being a secret, by the way, you know, because it's like we don't say it's a secret, because we've talked to each other. We talked about it. The only time it's a secret is when we're talking to buffers, the settled people. Then it's a secret. It's mysterious. It's wonderful. I have 11 dictionaries at home that wouldn't really reflect the fact that it's a secret. But what it is that it's a closed practice. We use it within our own social circumstances and situations. And when it's used externally, it's often degraded as slang. So over the years, people have become quite protective of it. Not only because it's of the protection it gives us as the people who are often being repressed, is that we want it to actually be honoured and to be recognised and to be celebrated in the value that it actually has, rather than as a reference point to the wider populations and their values and their sense of what's worthy and what is precious. And I think that action in itself is incredibly political and incredibly, I suppose, a return. But one of the losses of that, though, however, is that our older generations don't often have the opportunity to pass on many aspects of the language. Because again, the life expectancy of many travellers is 61. So the pool from which we can draw from for people who may have the space and the resources to give things openly in a very constructive, open way is quite limited. Because often, as a community, we are quite in crisis. And when you think that there is, I suppose, that well of resistance and the well of creativity and connection, people have also interpreted it as an othering. So I think spaces like this is incredibly important because we are sending a signal to ourselves and to others and to the wider community that it is something of immense value that needs to be explored and cherished, but most certainly spearheaded by the community rather than the external community. Because again, nothing about us without us, but this most certainly is for us and with us. So when it comes to some of the roots within the community, there's very little debate about the roots in a wider context. So we say that some people say it comes from Irish, which most certainly does, trade forms, deliberate inversions, which the professor very kindly went through. But I think we need to be very careful when we talk about the origins, because often when we talk about origins, what we're really talking about is the validity of something. We're saying it's real and it's important and it's of worth. And within our community, we very rarely talk about that, of the exact origins of things, because we know that it has value and it exists. So sometimes there's an academic expression and exploration which is very worthy and very important, but it is actually supporting the language and its people at the time. I think that's up for a question and hopefully discussion. And I know from some of the kind of the community collective gatherings of it, there's most certainly the language isn't static. That some of the words that originally have come from Irish specifically have transformed greatly in form, like the idea of mala being a bag and mala being a hand. Both things carry with very distinctly different kind of items. And also there's most certainly regional variations, because an example would be my father, and this is a very small difference. My father, for a boy, would say Subleen. My mother would say Subla. Both of them would die in that mountain. So the idea that people are very confident in their expressions and understandings. The next one we come to the gaps is that the community has never had opportunity to gather its own language up together concisely. And that itself is a gap, because what we have is we rely on a wider voice and often an older voice, like voices like Leyland, like Samson, like Adrian, and not all of those individuals were protective of the community. Some are critical, some found us as not an ethnic group, but as almost a subculture. And they need to be reviewed under that light, because they can be quite openly and blatantly what we now know is racist. There has been some delivery, I suppose, some changes. We know that in 2008, the language, and I was very happy to be part of it, the language fell under the protection of the UNESCO in I suppose, cultural and tangible kind of resources. So our language is protected on a UN level. However, it's not promoted or has no resources. And at the moment, we're actually currently even going through the battle of ensuring that our culture and history is taught, not just promoted, but taught within the institutions in the secondary and primary level of education, which at the moment it isn't. And so I think we know understandings, that's how far people are from our tone and from our understandings and from our culture. But there was a shift in 2019, pre-COVID, is that we formed the Tom Tarry group, which means the Good Voice group, which set up a group in Sligo, in Galway, and Dublin, and it almost set up a group in Kerry around people using the language and promoting it in a generational space where people just came together, used it, thought of ideas, thought poems, music, just new ways to describe items, like the Taragopa, because people didn't have a word for phone, so it would be the Topa would be, I suppose, the Taritopa would be a phone, or I suppose a talk box, another word for a mobile. The idea that the language can actually grow and evolve, it doesn't have to be just retrospectively referrals, because that's what every other language does, and we shouldn't be as limited. I'm very conscious of the time as well, because I know we're slow starting, but there are things around the standardization eventually will happen because it happens to our language. But if you even look at the word can't, If we were primarily a so the community mightn't have written down everything as primary oral. Even the idea of it being spelled with a C, which means we fell under the settled norm of, I suppose, English kind of Latinistic kind of prideful form, rather than with a K. So that shows you how impressed the structures are upon our language and our interpretive of our language, that even when we say the title of one of our words for it, we say it in a way that's not naturally native to how we would speak it. And at the end of this, hopefully we can send out references with like community references. There's Cawley, there's Joyce, there's John Winters, who unfortunately died a couple of years ago, who's from the American collection. There's McDonough, there's Ward. So there are a lot of community-based dictionaries, but they're not just a word list. They come with concepts and ideas and situational information that I think the wider information doesn't have. And I would be very encouraging people to hopefully to come together to share that. But one of the things myself and Donna were talking about, and hopefully, again, I wish I had the slides because they're all fancy, would have been for us potentially to have a couple of minutes of a discussion on the language ourselves and where we want it to go and the values of it, but also where we don't want it to go and what we don't want to carry on with it. And so if anyone has any questions, ideas, thoughts, I'm sure like Donna's not converted, like feel free to open them. Don't be shy. I warned Owen to have 10 questions. Does anyone have any suggestions, thoughts, ideas?
So one question, I suppose, for me, as a traveller man, around traveller history itself and how little has been written down and documented about traveller history in it. Do you think that with research into Cant language and linguistics and that it may unlock some of traveller history that we were unsure of?
Well, I think undoubtedly you can, because one word that we often know would be like Galimuni, like good God. So even the term Galan, we know the title of it, like deity and God and expression, but also it's a mid-Celt Smith god that has connections with Wales, which is quite unusual, but we seem to carry that connection. And that's only with the titles. Imagine if what we could unlock, we actually spoke to people and the community reached out, because often when academia is researching, it's very closed, people are very protective, not only because it's a language that has a history to it, but you're literally talking to someone outside your community, having to filter and explain concepts. Because again, that idea, notion of something being secret, we only say that to buffers. There's this context and stuff. So I think that if we give ourselves and the community and the wider community, because this is a part of the wider community's history too, the things that we could unlock could be absolutely amazing. But that does come with a commitment for resources and support that is not just a one-off initiative, but something that's sustained. And that's sustained through the educational pathways, through the museums, through the folklore commissions, because many of those information that has been gathered on us, people haven't accessed them. Like how many people here have actually come across any of the work of like eerie work of Master Green? And he was publishing in the 1930s in the Leinster Chronicles some of our proverbs and stories. And he actually recorded one of my favourite insults. And it's come from the tribal community, and it's a way it's so clever, and it's a psychological one, which related would be, may your child be born with your face. So if you get upset, you've insulted yourself. And I just think that itself is really creative, and so like it's not just us using language in a way that say we're being protective and we're around settled people, but it's a way of creativity, it's a way of connection, it's a way of music. Because I know later on Anne-Marie's going to sing one of the songs that the community holds and carries that actually is connected to Trish here's actually uncle, and I think that's only one little aspect. So imagine what we could find and discover in our own mutual connections with one another if we were given the opportunity. So the long way around would be yes. Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you for your contribution. I just want you mentioned Wards and McDonough's and those names. Could you expand a bit more on that, because I didn't fully follow what you meant by it?
Oh, that would be, there are people within the community that have collected their own archives that wouldn't really be in the hands of the wider institutions that can be circulated among travellers ourselves. And it's like the Can Speak Cant kind of secondary book, which isn't the one published by the children's publications, but by a group in Mayo, is by a woman called Christine Joyce. And many of the words were described in very different areas that had regional reflections on them. And that wouldn't usually be in the hands of the wider community. So it's usually the small productions that are usually around families that would be shared, but they are out there. And I would be really encouraging our people to, within the community, to start seeking them out a bit more. Because there are references and there are interpretations, and even There's Joyce, there's John Winters, who was quite interesting because his stuff had been quite adjusted to a lot of the American, tonnage, but there is a collection of graves in North Carolina. The headstones are in Gammon Kent. And I think so, like, not only did the language travel in the form, people found it, and it was sacred enough to them that they had it upon the headstones of memory. You know, so I think so sometimes that when we say it's a language, it's almost dismissed as something like curiosity or slang, when in fact it's incredibly important to people. You know, and I think that the wider community just see it as part of their own history, because like travellers have always been symbolic, I suppose, symbiotic to the wider community, but for us to be leading and having those opportunities of research and promotion with people supporting us rather than leading out themselves. And that's not to be critical of all the people who've done amazing research and support. It's just that times are changing and we need more allies rather than the champions. But I'll send out a list of them at the end of it towards Kevin.
Would there be an equivalent to Kent with the English travellers, for example? Or?
There's a high survival of Irish forms over there, but it's quite more blended with the Welsh Romachile kind of language and the Romanese and the kind of Romani gypsies. So because those communities have been blending for quite a significant amount of time, while we as a much smaller island with its own history have kept it in a different way, but people would see them as kindred languages. Like if you sat down with many kind of travellers from kind of English sites, there would be a huge commonality. There might be different kind of tonage and pronunciation in certain ways, but people would understand what each other were saying. Thanks very much, everybody.
Gurmaigad Owen and Gurmaigad Oíche Chultúir, as we're going to continue. Time is pressing on, so we're going to continue with the celebration now of the connection between the culture of the travelling community and Irish language and culture. So Owen did mention something there in his talk about how the travelling community has in the past and probably still continues to suffer from, unfortunately, at times, oppression, rejection. It made me think of an article I read recently where the writer was talking about creativity, and the writer quoted from the TED Talks. I don't know if you're familiar with the TED Talks. I'd never heard of them before, but the writer said that this person in their TED Talk had talked about the connection between vulnerability and sensitivity that sometimes leads to lack of confidence or low self-morale, and how that can be the basis for creativity. And it made me think that that's, very real with the travelling community, that they have been subject to oppression and rejection, and that the result of that is this creativity that definitely manifests itself in their contribution to traditional Irish music, especially in the dissemination of tunes throughout Ireland, which contributed to the survival of the music. So we're going to continue with the music. One other thing, sorry, I should have mentioned at the start. I mentioned Ramblin from the Good Relations. She's sitting down there, the Good Relations unit of Fermanagh District Council. She's put together a very nice small exhibition on traveller artefacts at the side here, which you can view at the end. They have descriptions there as well. And also Ramblin with her colleagues has put together the Celebrating Cultures publication that you see on the tables there. So, Lana Madrayanich, Leisha Kjol, agus Tammy Fiervuig, Dumik, Chathus Jack, Nervi Trouble Jogging, Leisha Rivra. So, Kurgi Falcha Raj, Liverdal, Rivmik, August Le Audrin, and Tom Shaw-Freen, Lucht Siúil. Mick Brown.
I'm going to keep it short and sweet now because we've great musicians from the travelling community coming up next. So I'm just going to do one here. I wrote this song. My neighbours are travellers and good friends of mine, and their daughter was out the back of my house one day, and she's a lovely little thing, and just so free. And I just, because I worked with travellers as well, kind of in homelessness, and as the previous speakers spoke, Owen, and spoke about kind of like that there's a lot of discrimination, a lot of, it's not easy, like there's a lot of travellers, it's a higher percentage end up homeless and stuff, and when you work with people, like you get to see the real people, the real heart of people, and I also think of the like in the music, because I love the music and the songs and the trad and stuff, and it was the travelling, like largely due to the travelling people who kept the music going down through the years, like bringing around tunes. The settled people used to look forward to them coming to get new tunes off them, because they were travelling around from place to place, picking up tunes off one place and bringing them other places. So it kind of kept, we owe such a debt to them, and yet in the modern age I hear all this shaffodge talk, as they say in Gaelga, just kind of horrible little stuff going around the place. And then I just saw this little girl at the back, and I thought, and I wrote this song about the kind of the treasure in the travelling culture, and I'm trying to kind of get her to let her see this. Do you know that kind of, even though she's never heard it, but she's in the last verse, so the story will tell itself. Travelling people, they have gone from the country to the town. No more the roads to ramble, they had to settle down. Make their way in one-horse towns, but the candle in the window's gone that welcomed weary travellers, tiring of the road. Was a time they'd walk the road, telling stories as they'd go, mending pots and kettles for the farms along the road, and watch the winter turn to spring. The corncrakes sang the summers in, knew every stream and rabbit hole, the treasures of the road. Sitting by the campfire bright, telling stories in the night of the fairies and the banshee, and how you heard the cuckoo call. Saddle up the old grey mare, we'll leave this town with all its cares. The wind is whistling out its prayer, freedom is a thing so rare. Margaret Barry and the Peckerdun brought their stories and their songs down the generations from the travelling tinker clans. Songs sang underneath the moon, time stood still and whispered soon. Soon the spring will come and the road will call to you. Child, there is no need to hide, you come from the travelling tribe. Your forefathers knew this land every step along the road. You belong to the sea and sky and to this land where the curlew flies. Every ditch is blooming, calling out your name. Every ditch is blooming with the glory of your name. Thanks very much.
Good Mick, lovely song, well done. So we're going to continue now with a singer from a member of the travelling community, Anne-Marie Ward from Galway. So, Curgi Falch, Liverdal, Riv, Anne-Marie.
And I just want to say thanks very much for inviting us down here today, Kevin. And the song I'm going to sing, actually, it's a bit of a funny story. A good friend of mine, going back about 2 years ago, gave me the words of this song, and I had never read or seen cant actually written in word. And actually the person that gave it was Owen, gave it to my friend. So I had it for about 18 months, and I decided I'd go online and see if the song was recorded just by chance. And I actually found a recording from Trish Riley's uncle, who came out of was at a fair, and he came outside, and when he came outside from the pub, he met a reporter, and the reporter asked him, did he know a song in cant? And on the gist of the moment, he said, I do, because he came across as a very humorous person, and he came up with this song. So this is the song I'm going to sing tonight, and it's the only one that I feel that is recorded in cant, and this is my culture and our language, and I'm going to do the best I can. First, I hope if there's travellers in the audience, you'll know what the song is about. So I mistled to the gripper, and that Loki was so gammy. He's the surliest ever seen. Well, the Bjorn sent for the shade dogs, she and me eyed her crazy, and I carved her in the Kenya as I need. Oh, the shades hadn't tarried to me yet, so I carved up me pea, and the Bjorn says to me, will you miss the soup and leave the lark behind ya? Or you will go to Respoon for the gran yoke that you carved in the gripper, will you miss the soup now? Oh, I said, lacking, will you missle, and don't look my jeels, for the Glocugaya, who is your fiend, don't soon my lace call you, and I am missling now. So I carved up me pea, and the Bjorn says to me, will you miss the soup and leave the lark behind ya? Or you will go to Respoon for the gran yoke that you carved in the gripper, will you miss the soup now? Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. That's lovely. Okay, we've got another singer, guitar player and harmonica player here waiting to come on now. Please welcome Trish Riley.
That was lovely singing there from Anne-Marie. I'm going to sing a song by Ewan McCall called The Travelling People. The Dubliners, I think, sang this as well. We're a free-born clan of the travelling people, got no fixed abode, and with no mats we are numbered. Country lanes and byways were always my ways, and I never fancied being lumbered. Well, there was open ground where a clan could linger. You'd stay a week or two, 'cause time was not your master, and away you jog with your horse and dog. Nice and easy, no need to go faster. Well, I knew the woods and the resting places, and a small bird sang when winter it was over. Then we'd pack our load and we'd go on the road, and those were happy days for the rover. Yeah, I knew life hard and I knew it easy, and I cursed that life when winter it was dawning. Oh, but I laughed and sang through the the whole night long. I saw the summer sun rise in the morning. And sometimes we'd meet other traveling people. We'd tell stories and swap family information. And at the country fair, we'd be meeting there all the people of the traveling nation. So come all ye freeborn men of the traveling people, every tinker, rolling stone and gypsy rover. The winds of change are blowing, our old ways are going. Don't let your traveling days be over. Fermanagh Mahagat. This next song is a song that was also recorded by Tom Munnelly, a professor in UCD, and it's a song that is in my family for generations, and he got it off John Jack O'Reilly, who's a cousin of mine, and a cousin of Bernie Riley's, who wrote the song that Anne-Marie so lovely, or sang so lovely, the Cant song. So this one is called Newry Mountain. For I wrote to you, Nellie, what makes you prove kind? What does make you pull the lily, leave the red rose behind? For the lily will fade, love, and the time will come soon, and the red rose will flourish into the sweet month of June. It is Slieve Gallen Mountain that bears a great name. Above any other mountain, sure it stands in a fame, where there's hunting and fowling and grousing also, and the best of bilberries on the mountain does grow. On the foot of Newry Mountain, where the ocean does flow, and the ship that sails on it into Newry does go, where the green flags are waving and the beating of drums, and all instruments of music and the firing of guns. Well, if I was in Newry, I could say I'm at home, because it's there I have a sweetheart, and here I have none. Kind sweetheart, what does make you prove kind? When your young man's far from you and you're not known his mind. For I wrote to you, Nellie, what makes you prove kind? What does make you pull the lily, leave the red rose behind? For the lily will fade, love, and the time will come soon, and the red rose will flourish into the sweet month of June. Thank you. This next song is an original song that I've written about the assimilation of travellers into the settled community, particularly after the 1963 report written by the government that said we should get rid of the itinerant problem. In my case, that meant, and not just in my case, in a lot of traveller children's cases, that meant to take them into institutional care, get them off the roads, and so this song is about breaking a person's lineage and, you know, the damage that that can cause, you know, to try and absorb a community with their own traditions and their own culture into what's seen to be, you know, the normal way of living. And like with the cant language that Owen spoke about, you know, a lot of what happens, when I grew up, we spoke cant constantly. We didn't think about it, you know what I mean? It's my language, it's the way, you didn't analyse, no more than any Irish person probably doesn't, until they go into academic circles, analyse their language. You know, we just spoke it fluently, and unfortunately, and I think Owen pointed it out, is that it's the oppression and it's the systems around us that have made our language not be spoken to the extent that it otherwise would, you know. So there's also, that's a very important thing to be looking at when we look at cant language and we look at languages and look at why today is it not spoken as much, and to look at that, you look at the bigger picture. Like, but I'm not here to talk, I'm here to sing. So this song anyway is called Broken Lines. Broken homes, broken hearts, broken truths, they make for bad starts. Shattered dreams in broken minds. You can't bridge the distance between those broken lines. You lose your direction on a one-way track, but you keep on moving because you can't get back. And it makes no difference, now you can read the signs. When you can't bridge the distance between those broken lines. Those broken lines, those broken lines, they undersize you, they won't recognize you, they paralyze you, the distance between those broken lines. The temperature changes, I'm hot and I'm cold. And I don't know my value, 'cause I've been bought and sold. As soon as I'm in, I'm told to get out. It's those broken lines that I'm talking about. Those broken lines, they undersize you, they won't paralyze you, they won't recognize you, the distance between those broken lines. It's not how you play, if it's on the cards. You're always a joker, never the queen of hearts. Always a loser, and you can never win. Those broken lines will always be your sin. Those broken lines, those broken lines, they undersize you, they won't recognize you, they paralyze you, the distance between those broken lines. You can't bridge the distance between those broken lines. Distance between those broken lines. Thank you. I'm going to finish up just with a few tunes. One or two. Gur míle magat. We do know our Irish as well, you know.
Trish, give her another round of applause, please. Trish Riley. Okay, Tamach Taka Guji and Virch Kyotri Jernach of his Erstach Anacht. Two local musicians now. Hopefully they're going to delve into the tradition of Irish music and the connection with the travelling community and Irish music. Fiddle player, renowned in this area, a former member of Dervish, and a young paper from a renowned family in Oher, Peter McKenna. So please welcome Corgi Falsa, Rumpel Liverdal, Peter McKenna, agus Shean McAleer.
Okay, thanks very much there. That was two jigs. Myself and Peter started listening to, well, Peter would know a lot more about the old travelling pipers than I would, but we were listening to some of the tunes there because we had this event coming up, and there's a lot of common tunes in common with a lot of the families, like the likes of the Dorans and the Keenans and the Furies and all that. They all seem to play this common set of tunes, and those were two of them there. The first one was the Ramblin Pitchfork, and the second one is called Coppers and Brass. And I have a thing about the names of tunes, and I always wondered about the Ramblin Pitchfork. I used to think maybe was it a man that left a pitchfork down somewhere, and then when he come back, it was somewhere else. And he thought that it'd go there on its own, or then I thought, no, we have a painting in the house at home, and it's of a fiddle player sitting in a hay barn, and he's playing the fiddle for a wee girl standing in front of him, and there's a pitchfork up against the wall. And I thought, I think that's where it comes from. He was a travelling Spalpeen Fanach, a travelling labourer, So that was the first one. Then Coppers and Brass, they all seem to play that tune as well, a lot of these families. So that was the first couple of tunes, and I'll let Peter talk to you about Johnny Dorn and that a bit more after we play another tune. So thanks.
What are we doing next there now?
The second one is Coppers and Brass.
Yeah.
And the next one's Comhairle Fraser's.
You start that off.
We're gonna go on next into 3 reels. These 3 reels are actually recorded by Paddy Keenan, reading a great travelling paper. And the first one's called Comhairle Fraser's. The second one is My Love is an America. And the third one is another great, well-known travelling Irish piping tune called Reggish Paddy.
So we were chatting about Johnny Doran there last night, and Peter was telling me a lot of stuff about him that I didn't know, you know. But he, you notice when Peter's playing the pipes there, when he's playing the chanter is in this hand here, what you play the tune on. You'll see him lifting it up off his leg and putting it back down, and that's because you have to create certain notes in that way. Sometimes you have to close the bottom of it, sometimes you have to leave it open. But Johnny Doran invented this like a system, like a stop valve key for it, so that he didn't have to sit down when he was playing the pipes. And he used to go around like the hÉireann fairs and horse fairs and things like that, and he'd be able to stand up playing. And what that also gave him was a great deal of freedom with his arms, and that more so than when you're sitting down playing the pipes, you're a bit more restricted. And you can really, really hear that in his playing. You know, it's like flowing water. You know, and there's so many notes in it. And he would have been really the godfather, I suppose, of the modern day pipers. You know, and the Keenans and the Furies and people like that would have taken all their music really from the likes of Johnny Doran. You know, so we'll play another couple of tunes of his, will we?
Yeah, we'll try the Toss Flowers.
Yeah. Another tune that comes up quite commonly is Toss the Feathers. Don't know where the name of that one. There's another one. I don't know where the name of it comes from, but who knows where that comes from. But there's actually two versions of it. So that used to happen a lot as well with the likes of Johnny Doran, who'd be going around the fairs and then playing. That there'd be other musicians who would come to listen to him, but because there was no recording or anything nobody had, you know, Walkmans or phones or anything like that there at the time, so they only could hear the tune he was playing maybe once through or twice through or whatever. So they might pick up the first part and get a wee bit of the second part, but not quite get it. And then they would make up their own second part, and that would become a variation then on the tune. And you get that a lot, you know, that happens a lot in different parts of the country, where you'd have the first part of one tune played with a different second part altogether, you know. So we'll play these two versions of Toss the Feathers anyway, and they're actually completely different keys and everything, but we'll try them anyway.
appearances here. We're going to go on ahead and do a wee slúir. This slúir comes from County Tipperary. It's called Sleeve Them On. It was actually recorded by Johnny Dorn, but it was never actually officially uploaded. It was, can you hear me? Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. It was recorded, but in his later years, just before he died. But I'm not actually sure what happened. But I think it was released in the 80s by Pat Mitchell from Dublin. But I'll give it a rattle anyway and see what you think.
All right, we're going to finish up now anyway, and we're going to play another two tunes here that are common to the travelling piper tradition. They were recorded by both Johnny and Felix Doran, I think, and Paddy Keenan, maybe a couple of times. But yet again, they seem to involve seasonal labour, these tunes here. The first one is The Harvest Home, so obviously when the harvest came home, and the second one is The Job of Journey Work, which I think means it's a job that you get when you're on your way to do another job. It's something that you pick up along the way type of thing. So we'll try them anyway. And thanks very much for coming out. And thanks to Kevin Goodwin and the Fermanagh and Omagh District Council for organising this event. And I hope you all enjoyed it. And we'll see you later sometime down the road somewhere. Thank you. Thank you very much. Night.
Thank you.